Modern Times is considered the final great silent film, and it's my personal favorite from Charlie Chaplin. Taking place during the Great Depression, it follows the misadventures of the tramp, as he struggles to adapt into this new world of assembly lines and machinery. This movie is a criticism of a changing society that treats workers as kegs in a machine, with people desperately seeking employment and going hungry. Chaplin was disgusted with the state of industrialization, and as usual, Modern Times is just as comical as it is deeply political. The big question is it still worth watching over 80 years later? Does Modern Times hold up in these modern times? Actually, I already called it my favorite, so I guess this isn't much of a hook. Spoilers. In Modern Times, Charlie Chaplin plays a factory worker, in a setting that is both mocking Henry Ford and paying homage to Metropolis. There's actually a ton of surprising visual effects going on here, with forced perspective and use of miniatures to give this factory a grand appearance. Here, the boss is watching over everybody on a sort of television set, and it's completely absurd and fantastical. This movie isn't trying to be subtle. They test out a method of feeding assembly line workers so they don't have to stop production. The tramp stumbles his way through these rough conditions without ever really breaking his spirit, but eventually he does suffer a mental breakdown. This is played up for laughs, but it's actually kinda dark, because he's angrily mocking a legitimate issue of workers being driven to their breaking point. It's all in good fun, it's all very exaggerated and satirical and slapstick, but it's making a statement. Also, this is crazy, but we're only 19 minutes into the movie. Chaplin's movies are always tightly written and meticulously directed. And the movie is filled with countless gags and scenarios that'll be analyzed and praised for all time. I can't get into every scene of the movie, but I'd like to jump around a little bit and talk about some of the high points. There's a scene where the tramp gets mistakenly labeled as a communist and gets thrown in jail. See, this is timeless humor. Plenty of people are incorrectly called communist every single day. So the tramp finds himself in prison, and there's a bunch of pretty funny moments here. One of which is an incident involving an inmate that has smuggled cocaine into the facility. The tramp unknowingly consumes a bunch of coke, and becomes increasingly bold and aggressive, to the point that he ends up foiling a breakout attempt by becoming completely violent. There's also a pretty funny and slightly more relatable moment when the tramp is sitting next to the minister's wife, and both of their stomachs start gurgling, making them both embarrassed and uncomfortable, while both pretending not to notice. He turns on the radio to make some noise, and it's an ad about having gas. His partner in the movie is an orphan girl named Ellen, played by Paulette Goddard, an actress that Charlie Chaplin took under his wing and became romantically involved with. Ellen isn't just a side character, she shares the spotlight with Charlie, and her on-screen presence is just as impressive and charming as the tramp's. In the movie, they're homeless, and they dream of living together. There's a daydream sequence that's just awesome. They're living in this perfect paradise where food can be plucked from the windows and cows can just squirt milk on command. It's genius, and it's stupid. I love it. They wind up living in an abandoned, worn-down shack, and the terrible reality of their situation is comedy gold, as Charlie hurts himself and destroys the property with every move he makes. He winds up getting a job as a night guard, and there's this terrific scene where he sneaks her in. They eat food, goof around, he gives her a bed to sleep in. One of the most famous Chaplin stunts takes place here, where he roller skates blindfolded next to a section that is under construction. This was just an illusion. It looks fantastic, it's funny and it's tense, but for a moment you might forget that this isn't a Buster Keaton film and just assume that he had blindfolded himself and risked death for this joke. That is 100% what Buster Keaton would have done. There's plenty of other funny moments in the movie and it's all worth talking about, but I'll wrap this up with the finale. The tramp gets a job as a server and a singer at the club where his partner performs at. The kitchen gag is pretty funny, but it ends with a bit of an intentional letdown. The promise of hearing Charlie Chaplin perform a musical number in a movie is kind of a big deal. He famously hated the gimmick of talkies, and he had little interest in his character having a voice. So the song that he produces is complete gibberish, since his character can't remember the lyrics to the song he performs. It sounds wonderful and it's an iconic moment, but again, like with everything else, context is everything here. From an entertainment standpoint today, this scene isn't super funny, but it's moderately interesting to see this character do something unheard of. This is the Tramp's final movie. He doesn't fit in these modern times like Chaplin himself, and his character ends here, under Chaplin's own conditions. This movie is a bummer. It's about hardship and hopelessness and hunger and homelessness. But it has heart and optimism, as the two of them set off into the future, refusing to give up. It's a beautiful ending. Modern Times isn't my favorite comedy. It is iconic, it's witty, and it's compelling, but as far as comedy goes, it is slapstick. A lot of the jokes are drawn out and exaggerated and can sometimes overstay their welcome. Fortunately, the movie does move ahead at a breakneck speed, and if you don't find a particular moment funny, it'll have switched up within a minute or so. And it is masterful slapstick humor, it's just not for everybody. There's enough visual humor and variety that I think anyone can easily find something to love about Modern Times. I'm always entertained and impressed by every single scene. It's dark, it's bitter, and it's delightful. It's an absolute must-watch.
Se bella tu sei d'ore, je notre soccorre, je notre citavore, je la tu la ti la toi. La spinach au la bouchon, cigarette portobello.